The soft girl rebellion, when survival becomes your cage. I want to talk to you today about something nobody warns you about when you're just trying to make it through. Nobody tells you that survival, the very thing that keeps you breathing when the world is collapsing around you, can quietly become the bars of your own prison. That the armor you put on to protect yourself, piece by piece, year after year, eventually becomes so heavy you forget what it feels like to stand without it. And if you are a Black woman, especially one who has spent decades being the strong one, the reliable one, the one everyone leans on, you already know exactly what I am talking about. You know what it feels like to be strong because weakness was never an option. You know what it feels like to carry everyone, everything, and still somehow find the strength to smile and say you are fine. But here is the truth we do not say out loud enough. You were never meant to carry all of that. And the fact that you can does not mean you should. I recently had the profound honor of sitting down with Meaka Moses, a woman whose life reads like a testimony written in fire and faith. Lamawaka is not just a survivor. She is a living, breathing example of what it looks like when God takes a life marked by unimaginable trauma and turns it into a beacon of hope, healing, and purpose. Her story, from childhood adoption trauma, rape, kidnapping, molestation, incarceration, homelessness, and domestic abuse, to now standing as a powerful voice for women who are learning to be soft in a world that taught them survival, is nothing short of miraculous. She is making the world a better place by showing women that their scars do not disqualify them from their calling. In fact, those scars might be exactly what qualifies them. And through our conversation, she reminded me of something I want to remind you of today. Your trauma does not get the final say, God does. So let's talk about what it really means to face your fears, step out on faith, and allow your wounds to become the foundation of your testimony and your leadership. Let me start here. Facing your fears is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of your transformation. When you choose to confront what scares you, whether that is telling the truth about your past, leaving an abusive situation, starting that business you have been dreaming about, or finally seeking help, you open the door for God to work in ways you could never imagine. This is true even when you have been through adoption, trauma, abuse, incarceration, homelessness, and betrayal. The fear is real. I am not going to pretend it is not. But it is not final. Lamiaka Moses taught me that. Her life has been marked by experiences that would have broken most people. But instead of letting those experiences define her, she allowed God to refine her. And that refining process, that sacred alchemy of turning pain into purpose, started with one simple but terrifying act: facing her fears. Now, let me tell you about a woman named Meaka. Meaka is a Black woman who openly identifies as a grateful believer of Jesus Christ, recovering from childhood abuse, mental health struggles, and addiction. Growing up, Meaka endured childhood abuse that shaped how she saw herself and the world. To cope, she turned to substances. She developed addictions. She battled mental health conditions that compounded her sense of isolation and hopelessness. For years, this cycle made it easy to believe that her life would always be defined by what had happened to her. But here's the thing: Meaka made a choice. She chose to embrace faith in Jesus Christ as a core part of her healing identity. She entered recovery and acknowledged both her trauma history and her ongoing struggles. Rather than hiding them, she engaged with a supportive faith based community where she could be honest about her story and receive encouragement. And today, Misha describes herself as a grateful believer in recovery, showing that she has moved from surviving to intentionally healing. Her openness about abuse, mental health, and addiction creates a safe space for others to confront their own fears and step out on faith toward healing. Her story demonstrates that early trauma does not disqualify someone from living a life of purpose and impact. In fact, it can become the very foundation of that purpose. Misha's story is a mirror for so many of us. How many of us are carrying shame about our past? How many of us believe that what happened to us or what we did to survive makes us unworthy of love, of healing, of purpose? Misha's testimony is a living example of how God can take a life marked by trauma and turn it into a beacon of hope and encouragement for others. And that brings me to the second truth I want you to hold on to. Stepping out on faith means moving even when you do not have all the answers. Faith is not about having perfect clarity, it is about trusting God enough to take the next small step out of the pain and into purpose again and again. For Black professionals and entrepreneurs, this can look like launching a new venture without certainty, exiting toxic workplaces or relationships, or choosing healing over hiding. Let me introduce you to Bethany Alibi. Bethany is a Black woman who channels her experiences of trauma into a mission of helping other women heal through faith, inner work, and honest conversations. Her journey involves significant trauma that could have led her to hide, shut down, or accept a life defined by pain. Instead, she began doing the inner work of healing, grounded in faith, and realized that her story could empower other women if she was willing to speak. The decision to break the silence became a turning point where fear met faith. Bethany leaned on faith and healing practices to process and integrate her pain. She chose to break the silence about her experiences, which is an act of courage and faith in itself. She created a space for women to unravel the chains that have kept them stuck, combining spiritual wisdom with practical support. And today, Bethany now helps women unravel the chains that have kept them stuck and reminds them that freedom exists. Her work shows that healing is possible and that faith can be a powerful tool for reclaiming identity and agency. Women who engage with her message are encouraged to confront their own fears and step into healing rather than remain bound by silence. Bethany's story expands the narrative around Black women and trauma, centering faith and healing instead of just pain. She contributes to a broader movement where Black women use their personal stories to build communities of resilience, support, and spiritual growth. Her work demonstrates that stepping out on faith can have ripple effects far beyond one individual, touching families, communities, and future generations. This is what Meaka Moses embodies. This is what the soft girl era is really about. It is about learning to be soft in a world that taught you survival. It is about releasing the cape, redefining strength, embracing softness, healing in real time, protecting peace as a practice, and turning purpose beyond pain. Now, let me tell you about Terry Nichols Long. Terry is a Black woman and caregiver who founded Trauma to Triumph, a faith based initiative that focuses on healing, resilience, and support for those impacted by trauma. Terry carried the emotional and spiritual weight of being a caregiver, often without adequate support. She managed her own trauma while simultaneously tending to the needs of others, an experience many Black women share. She faced the risk of burnout, compassion, fatigue, and emotional exhaustion. But Terry used faith as the foundation for navigating trauma and caregiving responsibilities. She established Trauma to Triumph, a structured way to turn her experience into a resource for others rather than letting them consume her. She engaged in public conversations about who takes care of the caregiver, bringing visibility to the hidden struggles of strong Black women. And today, Terry's work through Trauma too. Triumph shows that caregivers can move from surviving to leading, using faith to guide the journey. Her public discussions normalize the idea that even the strong ones need help, healing, and community support. She models that stepping into leadership programs or advocacy roles can be a form of healing and empowerment. Terry's story illustrates a pathway for Black professionals and leaders who are juggling trauma, caregiving, and ambition. They can build supportive, trauma informed spaces through faith and courage. Her work challenges the myth that strong Black women must suffer in silence, inviting them to face their fears about vulnerability and seek help. She embodies the idea that God can turn trauma into triumph, not just on a personal level, but through community oriented leadership. This is the third truth I need you to hear. Your scars can become your assignment. God can turn trauma into testimony and leadership. The very experiences that tried to break you, being violated, abandoned, imprisoned, or silenced, can become the fuel for you to help others heal, lead, and thrive. When you allow God to meet you in those places, your story becomes a roadmap for someone else's survival and success. Meaka Moses is living proof of this. Her life, marked by adoption trauma, rape, kidnapping, molestation, incarceration, homelessness, and domestic abuse, could have been a story of defeat, but instead, it is a story of defiance. Defiance against the narrative that says broken women cannot be whole. Defiance against the lie that says your past disqualifies you from your purpose. Defiance against the fear that says if you speak your truth, you will be rejected. And here is what I want you to understand: this journey, this sacred journey from survival to softness, is not a one time event, it is a repeated choice. Every single day, you have to choose faith over fear. Every single day, you have to choose healing over hiding. Every single day, you have to choose to believe that God is not done with you yet. So, what do I want you to do after hearing this? I want you to identify one fear tied to your past trauma or current situation, whether it is telling the truth about your story, leaving an abusive or toxic environment, starting a business, seeking therapy, or setting a boundary. And then I want you to take one concrete faith based step this week toward facing that fear. Pray specifically about it and ask God for a clear next step. Share the truth with one safe person, schedule a counseling or coaching appointment, begin the application, business plan, or exit strategy you have been avoiding. The challenge is simple but powerful. Do not wait for the fear to disappear. Move with faith while you are still afraid. Let that be the starting point for your growth. I want you to feel seen and validated, especially if you are a Black woman or man who has survived childhood trauma, abuse, incarceration, homelessness, or toxic relationships. Your story is not too much, it matters. I want you to feel gently confronted, but deeply encouraged. This conversation should lovingly challenge you not to stay stuck in fear, while reassuring you that God is present in every step. I want you to feel hopeful and empowered. Even if your circumstances are still hard, you should feel a renewed belief that God can turn your wounds into testimony and purpose. And I want you to feel grounded in worth. You are reminded that what happened to you does not define your value. Your worth is God given, and you are still standing for a reason. Lameika Moses reminded me that the soft girl era is not about being weak. It is about being wise enough to know that you do not have to carry everything anymore. It is about being brave enough to put down the cape and pick up your piece. It is about being faithful enough to believe that God can use your mess as your message. So here's my final word to you. And I need you to really hear this. You are not disqualified. You are being refined. Your trauma is not your testimony until you allow God to transform it. And that transformation starts with one small, scared, faithful step. So take it. Take that step today. Do not wait for permission. Do not wait for perfection. Do not wait until you feel ready, because here's the secret: you will never feel ready. You will always feel a little afraid. You will always feel a little uncertain. But faith does not require certainty, faith requires courage. And you, my friend, already have that. You have survived things that should have destroyed you. You have stood when everything in you wanted to fall. You have kept going when quitting would have been easier. So if you can survive all of that, you can take one more step, one more breath, one more leap of faith. Your soft girl era is not waiting for you to be perfect. It is waiting for you to be present. It is waiting for you to choose yourself. It is waiting for you to believe that rest is not a reward you have to earn. It is a right you were born with. It is waiting for you to stop apologizing for taking up space, for having things, for being human. And when you finally step into that era, when you finally put down the cape and pick up your piece, you will realize something beautiful. You were never meant to be a superhero. You were meant to be human, soft, sacred, whole, and deeply, deeply loved. So go, face your fear, step out on faith. Let God turn your scars into your assignment, and watch what happens when you finally give yourself permission to be soft in a world that taught you survival. Because that right there is the rebellion the world needs to see.